Hey guys, welcome back to another What's for Dinner. This week I'm sharing 5 super easy and yummy recipes. They're all really family friendly and really budget friendly, which is super important right now. I have some leftover meals that show you how to stretch your meals a little bit further. And like I said, these are all very budget friendly, and a lot of these things you'll probably already have in your pantry. And I'm super excited about today's video because it's actually a collab with Kim's Farmhouse Life. She is the sweetest person. She's super down to earth and very real, which I personally love on YouTube. She does What's for Dinners every single week. She does lots of cleaning, grocery hauls, tons of very similar content to mine, so I know you're absolutely going to love her. I'm gonna have her channel linked down below, and after you're done watching this video, make sure you head over there, subscribe, check her out, and let her know that I sent you. And if you are coming over from Kim's channel, I just want to say welcome. My name is Caitlin. I make lots of cooking, cleaning, motherhood related content. I do What's for Dinners every single week, and I'd be super happy if you hit the little subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and let's go ahead and get into this week's meals. So for the first meal, I am just making some chicken Parmesan, which is one of my husband and I's favorite foods ever. I haven't made it in a really long time, so I figured I was due to make that. I am just starting off with cracking a couple eggs and whisking those up. You're going to need some flour. I used about half a cup of just regular all-purpose flour, and then you're going to want to get a separate container for your breadcrumb mixture. This was 3/4 of a cup of Italian breadcrumbs. You're going to need half a cup of Parmesan cheese, and then you'll also need about a teaspoon of just regular table salt, as well as about half a teaspoon of black pepper, and then I did a tablespoon of parsley. And then you're just going to mix this all up, and that is going to be a topping for our chicken Parmesan. So now for breading our actual chicken, you're gonna dip them in the flour and get them well coated, and then you're gonna move that over into the egg mixture, coat it in that, and then finally into the breadcrumb mixture. You wanna get a nice thick coating because this crumb mixture is seriously super delicious, and that is going to be so much flavor for your chicken. And then just set that aside. And then the chicken that I'm using, it's actually 2 chicken breasts, and I just cut them very nice and thin, so I cut them in half, and that was about perfect for this recipe. Once I have all of my chicken breaded, I am just heating up some olive oil in a pan, and I'm going to be pan frying it. I ended up doing it this way. I know some people bake it, but I feel like I just gotta have a little bit of fried chicken once in a while, and it was super delicious. I ended up timing it for about 4 minutes on each side, and it came out absolutely perfect. This recipe was seriously amazing, and this is one that you're not gonna want to miss. After your chicken is all pan fried, you're going to be putting a little bit of marinara sauce in the bottom of a pan. I just used the Great Value brand one. It was nothing special, but it tasted really good. And then you're going to be laying all of your chicken in there, topping it with the rest of the marinara sauce, and then some mozzarella cheese. And then you're going to bake this in a 350-degree oven for about 20 minutes, and it came out absolutely perfect. While I had that in the oven, I just cooked some regular spaghetti noodles, and that is what I'm going to be serving this chicken Parmesan with. To plate this up, you're just going to put your noodles on the bottom and put a little bit of the sauce over top of the noodles and then the chicken on top. This was seriously so much food and super filling, and we had tons of leftovers for the next day. But you guys, this meal was absolutely amazing. I cannot wait to make it again. This next meal is going to be taco pizza. This is something that I actually make fairly frequently. I'm just starting off by cutting up a large onion. I only used about half of it for this recipe, and then I'm adding that into a pan with just 1 pound of ground beef. Like I've mentioned before, we use grass-fed beef. It's really nice and lean, so it's perfect for this recipe. And then I'm just going to be cooking that all up together over medium heat until the meat is all nice and brown. Once my ground beef was all done and cooked, I am just adding in 1 can of refried beans, and you're just going to want to mix this together until it's starting to heat through and everything is well combined. And then, of course, since this is a taco pizza, we're going to need some taco seasoning mix. So I'm just using the Great Value brand one, nothing special. And then you're going to need a couple splashes of water as well. You don't want it to be too thick or it's going to be hard to spread on the pizza crust. So a little bit of water just thins it out just a little bit. And then for my pizza dough recipe, I use the KitchenAid pizza dough. It's very basic and simple. The only thing that I do differently is that I do half wheat flour. I just feel like it makes it a little bit healthier. Obviously, it's not healthy, but a little bit of wheat flour just it makes me feel a little bit better, so that is what I always do. So I do 1 cup of the wheat flour and then 1 cup of the all-purpose flour, and that is what I use for this pizza dough. I can have it linked for you down below and you can find it that way. And then all you're going to do is put this meat mixture right over the top and spread it out. And I actually ended up feeling like there was too much meat, so I took a little bit off again, and I used that the next night for some burrito bowls. So that is a great tip if you are trying to make meat stretch right now. I know there's so much going on in our world. I will be sharing tons of tips on how to make meals stretch and make things go a little bit further, or revamping leftovers. I love doing that because you can make everything stretch a little bit further and you're not eating the same thing every single night. So that's just a little tip for you, and I'll be sharing plenty more in the coming What's for Dinner videos. And then I'm just topping this pizza with a little bit of Colby and Monterey Jack cheese. It doesn't really matter what kind you use, but I do prefer one that has a little bit of cheddar in it. And then I just threw it into a 400-degree oven for, I think I baked it for around 25 minutes. And then I'm prepping the fresh veggies for on top of the pizza. I always like to do a little bit of shredded or chopped lettuce. I love having tomatoes. Black olives are delicious. Really anything that you'd put on a taco is good on here. But the one thing that I was missing was Doritos. Putting crushed Doritos on top of this pizza is absolute heaven. So if you can get your hands on some Doritos in all of this craziness, oh my goodness, that is the best on this pizza. So that is what we are having for dinner tonight. Go ahead and top it with whatever you like, but we just kept it really simple with a little bit of lettuce and salsa because that's what we had on hand. As many of you probably know, if you are not new to my channel, you know I love making leftovers stretch a little bit farther and making something different out of them. So I am using that leftover taco meat from the previous night to make burrito bowls because I had a little bit left over that I didn't put on the pizza. And then I'm just chopping up all of the fresh veggies that I had on hand. I've mentioned this before, but we are only grocery shopping about every 2 weeks right now just to cut down on the exposure in the stores, which is something that I would recommend all of you doing if you are able to do that. So I had some fresh veggies left over, but this next week I am probably going to have to go without the fresh veggies and just use frozen. But that's just my little spiel on that. I'm heating up the meat and then I'm throwing that right over the rice with the fresh veggies. So this was a super quick and easy dinner, and it was nice because we had something different that was not the same as the previous night. So always think about how you can just revamp your leftovers and use those in a different way. It helps keep things interesting, and it also stretches the budget out a lot. But just top those with your favorite fresh veggies and you have a really delicious meal. This next night, I made a venison stroganoff. You can definitely use beef if you prefer that, but I am just heating up a little bit of olive oil and some Worcestershire sauce in the bottom of my pot, and then I'm going to be pan frying my venison. Like I mentioned, you can easily replace this with beef if you prefer like beef tips or something like that. We just have a ton of venison to use up because my husband is a hunter, so I'm always trying to think of different ways to use it up versus just eating like plain venison steaks, and this was a really delicious way to do it, and I'll definitely be redoing this in the future. But I'm just cooking those up and getting them nice and browned on both sides, making sure they're cooked all the way through, and then I'm going to be moving on. While I have my venison cooking up in the pot, I am just getting my veggies chopped up. All I did for this was super simple. I just did about half of a white onion, and then I also did a couple stalks of celery. I just made sure to cut it up nice and small, and then I'm going to be frying it in a pan. Once my meat has cooked completely through, I'm just going to be pulling that out of my pan because this is the pan I'm going to be using to make my sauce in. So get all of that pulled out. I know the bottom of this pan looks super funky, but I promise it's totally fine. I am just adding in a couple of tablespoons of butter, and that's going to kind of get all of this. It looks burnt, but it's just like the drippings from the meat. And then I did a couple of tablespoons of flour, some salt and pepper, and you're going to mix this up to make a roux. And this is going to be the base for our sauce. So once you have all of that melted together, you're going to be adding in some milk. I didn't measure it out, but I would say I added probably around a cup of milk. You're basically just going to want it so it's a little bit thicker. You don't want it to be super thin like milk. You'd want it to be the consistency of really any type of sauce. If you've ever made a roux, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I know this looks weird because of all of those little like pieces on the bottom. Guys, it's totally fine. And then in the other pan, I'm just getting those veggies going. I had a little bit of olive oil with some onions and celery, and get those cooking while your roux is thickening. Once your sauce has thickened up a bit, you're going to be adding in 1 can of cream of mushroom soup and getting that all mixed together. And then for a little bit of extra beef flavor, I just added in one of these beef bouillon cubes and got that mixed into the sauce. And since our steaks were a little bit on the bigger side, I did decide to cut those up into more of like a strip. You can leave them whole if you prefer them that way. It really depends on what kind of meat you're using and just the size that it is, but that is what you see me doing here. And then I am just mixing everything together in with the sauce to make the stroganoff. I got the veggies in there, I've got the meat in there, and then I'm also adding in a can of mushrooms. You could do regular raw mushrooms if you wanted, but just make sure that you cook them up a little bit in advance. But that is it for this sauce, other than a little bit of garlic powder and then salt and pepper. Of course, you can add other seasonings if you like, but that is what I added, and I felt like it was perfect. And of course, this wouldn't be stroganoff if I didn't serve it over egg noodles, or you could do rice if you wanted to, but for the most part, I always serve our beef stroganoff over noodles. So I'm just getting those all cooked up and ready to go. To keep our sides super simple, I just did some steamed green beans with a little bit of butter, some salt and pepper, and that is about it. I usually keep our veggies really simple because I have 2 little kids and I just need to have something really easy. So we just usually do butter, salt, and pepper, and that is good enough for me. Next up, I am making scalloped potatoes and ham. This is one of my all-time favorites. It's something that my mom used to make, and this is actually her recipe. I tweaked it just a tiny bit, and I've also done it in the Crockpot before, which I do have a video for, so I can link that for you. But I've seriously made this recipe 1,000 times. I'm just starting off with 5 potatoes. Let's see, I think I had 2 or 3 russets, and then I had 2 of like the golden potatoes. So I used a variety and it turned out perfectly fine. So don't be afraid to just use what you have on hand. But I'm just getting all of those potatoes peeled, and then I'm going to be thinly slicing them and throwing them right into a bowl. And then I am adding a little bit of onion. I only used about half of one for this recipe. You can use really however much you want, or you could totally omit this, but I do feel like it adds a lot of really good flavor. And since this is a main dish, I did want to add a little bit of meat. I just added some ham that I had already cooked in my freezer. I had it left over from Christmas. I always freeze our extra ham chopped up like this for recipes, but you could omit this if you don't want to do this as a main dish, or if you just don't have any ham, but just get that ready to go. And then you're going to be adding in 2 tablespoons of flour. You're going to need a 1.5 teaspoons of salt. You'll need a 1/2 teaspoon of pepper, and then garlic powder to taste. I do quite a bit, probably about 1.5 teaspoons, I would say, give or take, and then just get that set aside and ready to go. Spray your baking dish with a little bit of oil, and then you're just going to basically layer everything into the pan. So I do 1 layer of the potatoes and the ham and the onion, and then you're going to sprinkle half of that flour mixture right on top of the potatoes, and then you're going to top it with your favorite kind of cheese. I like to use a Colby and Monterey Jack blend, and then you're just going to repeat the process. So do the potatoes, the flour, and then a little bit more cheese on top. For milk, you see me adding 2 cups of 2% milk, and then I did end up adding a little bit more. I would say I used probably right around 2.5 cups total. I just felt like it needed a little bit more when I looked at it, and it ended up being the perfect amount. So 2.5 cups I feel like is dead on, and then make sure you get that last layer of cheese right on top. And I do like to cover this with aluminum foil for that first half an hour, and then after that I pull that aluminum foil off and let it cook for half an hour uncovered, and this is going in a 375 degree oven for about an hour. This last meal idea is going to be a super easy one. It is just BBQ turkey meatballs, and I made them in the Crockpot, so something that you can make in the morning and then walk away from. I just started off by chopping up half of an onion. This is a yellow onion, and I made sure that the pieces were really nice and fine. And then I am just sauteing this in a little bit of olive oil over medium heat until they are translucent in color. And then once they were almost all the way cooked through, I did add in a big scoop of minced garlic for a little bit more flavor. For these turkey meatballs, I'm just using 1 pound of 90% lean ground turkey, and then I'm adding in 1 egg, the onions, and then I did add in a little bit of Worcestershire sauce as well. You guys know I love using that for a little bit of flavor, a little bit of saltiness. It's just perfect in there. And then I did do some salt and pepper and a little bit of garlic powder like always, a little bit of parsley, and then about half a cup of rolled oats. I tried so hard to be able to just mix this with the spoon because I hate touching raw meat. It just grosses me out. I really need to get just some gloves in my kitchen so I don't have to do it anymore. But it did not work, so I ended up having to just use what God gave me, use my hands, and it worked out just fine that way. I am spraying my Crockpot with a little bit of olive oil. These did stick, so make sure you spray the Crockpot really, really well. Probably add even a little bit more oil than I did. And then I'm using my cookie dough scooper to scoop the meatballs into my Crockpot. You definitely do need to go back and actually roll them into the balls, but I feel like by using the cookie dough scooper, it always makes them just the right size, and it just really helps them be all nice and even. Once you have all of your meatballs in your crock pot, we're going to be adding in some barbecue sauce. I always use Sweet Baby Ray's. It's just my favorite barbecue sauce. I just use the original flavor. And as you can see here, I added a little bit of water into that bottle because I was trying to get the last little bit of it out. And I will say you probably want to add a little bit of water anyway, so go ahead and do that, and then just put your crock pot on high for about 4 hours and watch them close because mine did burn a little bit. I was going to make some roasted potatoes to go with these meatballs, but I was feeling kind of lazy and pasta just seemed like the easier option on this night. So I just did some little mini bow tie pasta and got that all cooked up and ready to go. And then for seasonings, I kept it incredibly simple, but it also is super tasty this way. I just did a little bit of butter, some garlic powder. I did a pretty heavy hand of that. And then I did a little bit of salt and pepper. I melted some cheese on top, and that was a super easy and delicious side. My husband really liked the pasta this way, and it's just super easy and super budget friendly.
Well, that is it for this What's for Dinner video. I hope that you enjoyed it and that it gave you some meal ideas, some inspiration, and some ways to use up ingredients in your pantry. And don't forget to head over to Kim's Farmhouse Life. She is so sweet. You're absolutely going to love her. Her link will be down below. And if you're new here, hit that little subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.